Now I'm going to turn to some solutions on farms because remember, go back to the statistic that I shared with you earlier. More than 90% of the consumptive use taking place, and particularly even greater than that in the water scarce regions of the world, is going to irrigated agriculture. So we have to be looking at farms and trying to solve this water budget equation. The pictures here are from two different places in the world. This isn't to suggest that everybody who grows crops in Arizona is doing it in a wasteful or an inefficient way. There are a lot of farmers that are using the more advanced irrigation techniques that are illustrated here from India. What's shown in the picture from India is what's called drip irrigation. It's rather than spilling a lot of water out into the field, what we call flood irrigation, it's instead using water in a very precise way, using these plastic tubes to deliver the water out to each individual plant, to deliver the water right to the plant roots, and it can end up saving a lot of water. It can actually reduce the consumptive use of water fairly remarkably. There are many, many different ways to be more efficient with irrigation water, and we need to be applying those at grand scales in a much more comprehensive way. Another way that we can think about saving water out on farms is to consider, if you're having water shortage problems, if you're running out of water for your farming activities, we have to think about whether or not we might try to grow something different, something that might use a lot less water. And so here's an illustration just to make this point. So let's say that you were previously growing a lot of alfalfa to feed cattle, to feed beef cattle, and you decided that you wanted to consider the possibility of shifting on that same farmland, going to growing vegetables instead. Quite remarkably, that conversion on the same area of land would use 75% less water, generate 9 times more income for the farmer, and create 23 times more jobs. Now, those are remarkable numbers, and it does suggest that there's a lot of opportunity here. There's tremendous opportunity to get at that large volume of water that's being used for growing our crops. And it may make you wonder then, why aren't a lot of farmers doing this? And there's a lot of reasons why. There are cultural reasons. You may have been growing the same crop that your father grew and that your grandfather grew, and it's what you've become accustomed to, and it's what you love doing. It's like this is your identity as you grow alfalfa, or you grow walnuts, or you grow onions, and that's something that's sort of in your bloodstream, and it's what you know how to do, and it's part of your heritage, and there's a lot of strength to that, and it makes it difficult for you to think about shifting to other practices. You may not have the capital to make the switch. You may not have the financing to be able to do that. To go from one thing to another may require some adjustments, some modifications, some infrastructure investments on the farm that may be very difficult for you to make financially. And so we need to be thinking about, so given that there is this potential to realize so much water savings out on farms, we as a society, we as our national governments, as our state governments, need to be thinking about, how do we incentivize this? We don't want to tell the farmers what to do because they're going to be resistant and hostile to that kind of a mandate. And more importantly, they're the ones that know better than the rest of us how to save some water out on the piece of land that they've been working on. So we need to find some way to help them make these transitions. And so that gets me to my other big solution. We need to find ways to enable each of us to better share water, and to share water between different groups of users, between farmers and cities and industries, and share water with the environment, share water with nature again. So I'll tell you this very quick story about my home city of San Diego. I grew up in San Diego, was there until I was in my early 20s. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to go visit my parents in San Diego, and on the flight home, I took these pictures from the airplane. It's looking down on Point Loma and San Diego Bay there. And turns out I flew right over, just to the east of San Diego, a large farming district called the Imperial Irrigation District. Extremely important farming area for all Americans. This is where most of your winter vegetables come from. in the supermarkets. It's where almost all of our winter lettuce comes from, for example. This is a really, really important area, and the Imperial Irrigation District uses a lot of water. They hold the largest single share of the Colorado River. So the share of California's rights to the Colorado River. They hold nearly half of California's entire entitlement to the Colorado River out in this one farming district. And so the water managers in San Diego came up with a really, really smart solution. San Diego has done a great job on water conservation. San Diego has started to invest in water recycling. San Diego has just built one of the largest desalination plants in the United States. They have been trying a lot of different things to try to rebalance their water budgets, but they're still not secure. They still feel like they need some additional water supply. And so they went after what I think is one of the smartest and most economical ways of improving their overall water security. They worked out a deal with the Imperial Irrigation District. And here's how the deal works. They pay each year now, and a little bit more every year, about $60 million presently each year to the Imperial Irrigation District's farmers. In return, those farmers are investing on their farmlands and putting into place more efficient ways of irrigating, lining their irrigation ditches and canals so not as much evaporates or seeps into the soil where it subsequently evaporates. Finding all kinds of different ways of saving some water using the funding that the city of San Diego is providing. In turn, that water now accounts. That water that's being saved on the farms in the Imperial Irrigation District is providing fully a third of San Diego's entire water supply. There are other examples like this that I could have shared with you, but the really important point I want to make here is that if we find ways to work out deals among ourselves, once a community of water users has realized that they're bumping up against the ceiling of their available water supplies, one of the really important things to do, and after you've invested in creating water and being as efficient and conservative with the water as you can, the next place to turn is figuring out ways to share water with each other. So in any community of water users, there are going to be some water users who don't have enough water to meet their needs. They wish they had more. They'd do anything, including pay for having more. And there's always going to be some water users in the water user community that can afford to use less water. They have a surplus. They have a luxury of water. They have more entitlement than they need. Or they can readily invest, like the Imperial Irrigation District did, in saving some water that could then be traded. In this way, particularly with farmers, I talk about in my book about this creates huge opportunities for farmers in these irrigated agricultural areas, in these places where you have water scarcity problems. It creates the opportunity for farmers to not only grow crops, but also to grow water. And that can be a really important supplement to their incomes. It can make them a lot more financially viable, and it's something that we need to be taking a strong look at everywhere that we have water scarcity problems, and we need to take a hard look at the hurdles and the impediments, the laws and regulations and rules that prevent this kind of activity from happening. Because when it happens, we can all better meet our water needs, we can better share water, and our local economies will benefit from that, and will create a lot more jobs at the same time. So I'll leave you with just one thought. This isn't a comprehensive vision of a water secure future, but it does illustrate the points that I've been making in this presentation. It's just one possibility. So if we can find ways to just use 20% less water in irrigated agriculture, we would be able to transfer or reallocate that water such that our farms can remain productive, our cities can grow as they need to grow, and our rivers, wetlands, and estuaries can be restored back to their health. So I think about that possibility every day, and I commit much of my time in my professional life to that particular objective. I think it's very, very important, and we're looking for all ways to enable that vision. I'm going to close with this slide. It's the last page of my book, Chasing Water. that I wrote a couple of years ago, but it's a really, really nice quote written by a guy living in northern New Mexico, in an agricultural community in northern New Mexico. So he says, later that night it began to rain, then to pour, as if the skies were saying that as soon as we all managed to cooperate among ourselves, then one way or the other, there would be enough water for everyone. And I want to leave you with that thought, and thank you very much for your attention today.